Hello and welcome to another Domo live stream, community live stream. We're excited to continue to bring these to you as kind of our fall ramps up. Most people's fall, anyways. Obviously, global company. So depending on where you're at, depending on what season you're at, I am currently looking forward to the fall. So we are ramping all of these up here at Domo, considering our Domo Solutions live streams, our ACE customer enablement live streams. We had a huge product announcement live stream. And we couldn't be more thankful to all the people that come on and provide their expertise. And today, we have a really exciting session because we're going to dive into Domo's Agent Catalyst, really looking at AI in action. And I have my good friend, Braxton Fullenkamp, Principal Sales Engineer at Domo. Really excited to jump into all of these. But before we do, I always have some announcements. If you had joined us on our product webinar, you would have saw a very exciting challenge that we've put out to all of our community users. So if you're part of our community or you're part of our online community, whether it be on Reddit or Quora or Stack Overflow or LinkedIn, wherever you may be, you have a chance to dive into our digital chatter challenge on Domo's mainframe. We've got a ton of stuff happening, and this is all to just give you an opportunity to maybe earn some really cool points, not only in our community, but also some very cool prizes externally outside of our community. We have a Domo Palooza Pass that we're going to be giving away, which is super exciting, along with a ton of Amazon gift cards, as well as an Apple Watch, maybe an Oura Ring, all kinds of things. So to get involved, and we have already a lot of really cool submissions, so it's time to up our game a little bit. Scan the QR code for details. You'll be able to jump into our digital channel challenge. That's going on until August 31st, and that is a mouthful to say. So I'm going to get right out of that and move our session over to Braxton. We have a ton of people joining us. We've got folks from Virginia joining us, from Michigan, from Utah. Sharon says our QR code says expired. Let me look into that and provide you a new QR code sometime in the session. So stay tuned. Apologies for that. Not sure why that would happen, but we'll look into that as well. Braxton, thank you so much. I know that you have maybe had been on something before, maybe previously, or you've been on a number of our webinars before in the past. These community live streams are obviously a really good opportunity for you to get introduced to our community audience. So we really appreciate you taking your time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie, and hello to the community. I'm Braxton, sales engineer. I've been here at Domo, I think about 5.5 years. Former Domo customer, so I've been using the platform upwards of probably close to 10 years now. And just really passionate about what we're going to talk about today. Domo is a really broad platform, but I think we have some really big differentiators when it comes to enabling these AI workloads in a way that is super user-friendly. There's a very low barrier to entry, and so excited to talk a little bit about the platform and then dive into these solutions.
I love it, Braxton. I'm going to turn things over to you. We'll get your screen shared. And now this is my favorite part, where I get to get out of the way and just let you share that passion and enthusiasm and expertise. You may see me again when I share that QR code, either closer to the end, or if we have more comments or questions that come through. Make sure you're utilizing the chat wherever you're joining us, on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or on StreamYard itself. You can engage with us on the chat. So make sure you're utilizing the chat and comment sections of all of those platforms, and that's how we get a chance to either read your comment on the air, or question on the air, as well as give kind of a tie-in to Braxton so he can interact with you as well. So thanks again, Braxton. There's your screen share, and here I go. Your turn, brother.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So I know this is for the Domo community. If you don't know Domo, you're just happening upon this, I want to give you a little bit of background on who we are and what we do, and just kind of lay the foundation. And then we're really going to focus in on the right part of this diagram. It's the applying AI in these apps, in these dashboards, and leveraging our workflows capability. But Domo as a whole is an AI and data product platform. And that means that we take the data sources that you have access to, regardless of where they live, whether it's native APIs, things that are already live in your data lake or in your enterprise data warehouse, on-prem, Excel files, whatever that might be. We enable you to get that data and through our library of our connectors, land that data into a cloud data warehouse of your choosing, be it Snowflake, Databricks, Oracle, Google BigQuery, Dremio. We support a wide array of different functions or databases there. We then allow you to use our Magic ETL tools or our data modeling tools to model that data into a data product that is a reusable asset to then power the things that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to assume that a lot of this has been done today, that the data is already connected through the connectors, and that you have something that's ETL'd, and you're really looking to take some action on that data. And as a sales engineer, I interact with many of our customers and prospective customers, and AI is certainly the talk of the town. Really, I'm finding two sort of key frameworks or use cases that keep coming up over and over again. And so I'm going to show you two examples of those today. Um, they're going to be sort of genericized and really just some ideas that I've had from a lot of these different conversations. But the two categories that they fall into are batch processed AI workloads. So things that need to happen on a schedule, think like month end close in finance or weekly status report going out to category managers. Or we're actually going to look at kind of a mix there. We're going to look at some P&L analysis. We have some P&L data that's really fine-grained, really detailed, and we need to produce some analytics on a schedule that are going to go out to leaders that are going to review this content. So that's kind of the first thing we're going to look at, is that batch process. And then the second is going to be more real-time in nature, and it's related to, I guess, maybe some personal frustrations, when something needs to happen now. What we're going to look at is an example of a call center where, as an end user, we've all been on the other end of the phone where we answer and we have to explain the problem that we're calling about. And then sometimes we have to explain it 2 or 3 times as we transfer through different agents. And so I wanted to imagine a world where we are a little more proactive around that. And so I think that I would just call like the just in time or the real time AI use case. And that's the second use case that we'll look at. So with that, we'll get out of PowerPoint here and we'll get into the Domo platform. So as promised, the P&L use case here, we have already modeled this data. As I mentioned, this is a data product. We are looking at data that we have ingested, and we've actually run a machine learning style forecast on it. So we did some time series forecast on individual accounts at individual locations in the categories of expenses and revenue line items. And so we end up with this data set that is not super large, but it's something that would be hard for me to look at and sort of intuit information out of it right away. And so we have some options. We could obviously build a dashboard. We could apply our AI chat experience, which we have. So this data set is AI ready. We've filled out our AI dictionary on the different columns that are in the data set. We've given them some context, some descriptions, some synonyms. We've actually used that to launch our AI app creator. So I've already done this, and we'll see the results of this in a minute. But what I'm really looking for here is something that tells me the news without me having to go and search for this information or drill down and get this information. And so what we're going to do is apply an AI agent through Domo's Agent Catalyst in the context of a workflow to prepare in batch for each location an AI summary. And so a couple of the different Domo components we're going to use today, if you're not super familiar with them, we're going to use our AI service layer, and we're going to leverage an LLM. In this case, we're going to use Domo GPT as our foundational model that we're going to prompt against. We're going to use AppDB, which is Domo's NoSQL data store. It's typically used in the context of pro code apps in Domo. And so we're going to do that because we're producing a large amount of text that's actually too large to fit in a single cell of data in Domo. And so a NoSQL database is a better place to store that. So we're going to talk about those concepts. And then this is going to be orchestrated through our workflows engine, which is what we're looking at here. So let's walk through some of these steps and kind of get a lay of the land. To start, I need to clear out my AppDB document store. Because this is a demo, I don't want to accumulate a bunch of data. So I'm finding all the documents in my document store and I'm deleting them. And these are just code engine functions that go out and delete those things. And then really where we start is we're querying a table in Domo to get information around each one of our locations. So in this example, I work for Elite Fitness, which is like an upscale gym with locations all across the US. We've got, I think, 25 or 50 fictitious locations here. So you can see we're getting back a row for each location, the location's name, and then just some key metrics that I wanted to feed my LLM around period over period and revenue and expenses broken down into different categories, and even some regional information so I can see how am I competing with those people who are in my region. And so we have 25 rows of data here that we're going to process through in this workflow. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to step into a loop. So we've got a loop here where we're grabbing the first location. We're grabbing the zero index of that array of data, if you're familiar with sort of that terminology, but essentially grabbing that first row of data, we're converting that into text so we can pass it to our LLM because large language models like text. So we're going to give them text. And then really this is where the magic happens. And this is our AI agent task. So there are some key ingredients here that we're going to talk about. But while we chat, I want to grab some data to throw into our agent here so you guys can kind of see how this works in real time. So we're going to test our agent, and this is the text representation of that first row of data. So we've got our first location, Elite Fitness Manhattan. This is what gets passed in real time when this workflow is running, but we're just going to run it interactively and kind of show you a preview of what happens here. And so while that's running, let's talk about some of the ingredients or the knowledge that we're passing to this agent. The first thing is the prompt. What am I giving, what is my input into this agent? And really, it's just that single row of text. I'm passing that in. And then I've given my AI agent access to some tools. Those tools are the ability to create an AppDB document, which is, again, where I want this stored in the end. So I've configured this to say, this is the ID of the AppDB collection that I want you to write into. I've given it some instructions on what I want it to look like. So I need a specific, location name so I can filter on that. And then my analysis, and this is kind of what it's going to look like. And then we're also giving this tool the ability to query with SQL against some knowledge. And so this is a relatively new user interface in Agent Catalyst that makes it a lot easier to sort of bulk add different elements. And in my case, I'm passing in, just to keep this simple, one data set. And it is that P&L forecast and history data set that we looked at earlier. So it's this data set that we were looking at over here. And I'm giving my agent the ability to query that with SQL as it sees fit, pursuant to the instructions that I've given it. And so in my case, I've given this instructions to say, you are a financial analyst for Elite Fitness. You have 15 plus years of experience analyzing upscale fitness club operations. I want you to look at the KPIs across these different categories with the information that I've given you and the queries that you would run for additional context. Now, these agents do tend to be really thorough. So I'm giving it instructions to say, only look at 2 to 3 focused SQL queries per KPI maximum. And I'm giving it some context of what it will receive. And then I'm giving it very explicit instructions, and we can, I can share this later if it's of interest. I've actually given it very explicit instructions on what I want the final analysis to look like. So I'm using some HTML formatting because I want this to be consumed in an app. And so I'm just being a little bit lazy and having the LLM format this for me before I get it into that AppDB collection and get it into the app. So let's take a quick look at what the agent has done. We're showing you all of the steps in real time as the agent's processing. And so we can see it's appropriately running queries with our location ID. We're getting some key metrics. We're looking for high variance accounts. So again, part of the instructions were don't query the entire data set because that'll take a lot of context, but just look at things like descending limit 5 or ascending limit 5 to find things that are low or high value. And so we're getting some information back there. We're getting some regional context. So we're saying, okay, query everything in the Northeast and see how are we comparing against that. So I can see how my competitors are doing from a profit perspective, all of this information being fed in. And then the agent goes to work building out the analysis. And so we can see it here in a raw format that's not really formatted for viewership, at least. And then if we scroll down, we can see the agent actually gave it to us in a really nice format. And this is what I can expect to see when we consume this in a dashboard. And so pausing here for a second, this is sort of the whole process by which you can use to generate analysis like this. Obviously, this is specific to a P&L. We could pass in really any data. And oftentimes, customers are looking to pass in more than one data set. And we'll look at that in our second use case as well. Now, one thing that I'm missing in this workflow that I would add if I was going to do this in production is the ability to audit this before it goes into my executive's hands, because obviously we all don't really trust AI that much yet. And so a couple of things I would do here. One thing I might do is pass that analysis to a second agent and have it fact check the figures. So essentially pass in what we've built, give it access to the data set and say, please double check everything. And that's going to make my job as a human a lot easier downstream when I do sort of my final review. And then when we do our final review, we're actually going to add a user task. And I would put this into a form, so a general task here, and I would build a form that lets me edit the information before it ends up in the dashboard. So didn't do that for the demo. Certainly something you can do. Very capable of doing that within Domo's workflow tools here. So what does this look like in the end? Well, of course, we all know Domo does dashboards. And so this is the result of the process that I was running earlier over here, the AI analysis. But, dashboards make me work for the information. They don't really give me that summary that I'm looking for. And so what we have here is a pro code app that is filterable, by location here. And you'll see that this is updating to this specific location, as well as, of course, all the charts are updating in the app as well. But I now have this natural language summary that is powered by Domo's Agent Catalyst. That is a written summary, including key metrics, strengths, and concerns. So for this location, we're operating at a 6.9% loss. So this one's, critically bad, despite, wanting to be around that 10 to 15% profit. And then the agent has done some root cause analysis. And then this might be my favorite part, is that the agent has given us a priority list of actions that we should take. Again, this is where that human in the loop is really important, because some of these might not be obtainable or things that we might not want to suggest to our leadership. But this is just the starting point for you to be able to go in and make those intelligent recommendations on a location by location basis, and not have to spend the time sort of writing. I can't tell you how many times in my past sort of pre-Domo life I spent updating, metrics in a PowerPoint and being frustrated when I missed one and it ended up in the executive presentation. This is, something that we can do really rapidly and can be confident, in sharing with our leadership. So I'm going to jump to the next use case, but I thought I'd pause and see, Eddie, is there any comments or chatter we want to take care of here?
Chris, we have Chris Hunter in the background, also on the team. He's doing a fantastic job with all of the comments and answering the questions as they come through. Haven't seen anything crazy that you might want to dive into, but if I do, I'll make sure I'll flag it for you as we go. But yeah, you're free to keep going.
All right, we'll keep going. One other thing I'll mention, if you're not aware of the AI capability in Domo, is this ability to have a conversation with your data. And so because I did my AI readiness on this data, I can have natural language conversations with it. And it's context aware. It knows that I filtered down to a single location. So here's a question I asked before we got on the live stream here. I opened up my AI chat experience. Domo is aware of the content that I'm looking at. It's looking at all of the cards and all of the data sources that I have on this page. And I asked a question about what are the key cost drivers for this location. And so I'm filtered down to River North. Domo gives me this little notification here saying, hey, we know that you're looking at a specific location because we can see the page filters. And so we get both a natural language summary as well as a visualization. And I can change my visualization chart to a single bar here if I want to. Domo is also being very transparent, just as it was in the agent process. It's showing us the SQL query that it's running, as well as the raw data that it's getting back before it builds the chart. Perhaps my favorite part of this is that I can copy this with one click and go drop this into a chat, whether it's in Teams or Slack, and look like the smartest person in the company because I got this answer in 10 seconds that normally would have taken much, much longer. So I'll kind of put a bow on the P&L example here. Again, this is batch processing of AI, leveraging an agent. It's not the same as doing sort of a defined script because, of course, you could write, like a Python script and produce an analysis that is very standard. But remember, we're using an LLM. We're using an agent who has the flexibility and freedom to go run these multiple queries and dig into the analysis here and produce something that is bespoke for each location. So just bear that in mind. And I think this is a really common pattern that we're seeing across our customers. So hopefully this is a useful pattern that you can take and run with. The next example that I want to show actually starts in Snowflake. So this example, again, is that call center example. It's the example where something needs to happen just in time. This is very applicable in manufacturing, where you might see a machine go offline or a temperature excursion happen in a logistics scenario where you're shipping a package that's temperature sensitive and you have an IoT monitor that monitors that, and we're starting to slip out of that temperature range, and we need to do something about it. And Domo's workflow engine is also really, really good for that. So in this example, I put together a couple data sets related to customers of an airline. So all just fictitious data here, nothing confidential, but I have information around customers and flights and possible flight rebookings and weather data and airports and everything that a call center agent might want to know. And probably today is going system to system to system, having to swivel chair, as we call it, between these data systems to pull out all of this information. And so I've created these tables in Snowflake. I've registered them into Domo using our Domo on Snowflake configuration. So I've made them all available. And I'm going to pick this up again at sort of that data product level where I can simulate an incoming phone call. So of course I'm going to have to simulate these things. It's not something that I can do live, because I don't have an IVR system handy. If anyone does, let me know. We can test it out there too. But I'm going to simulate that a call is coming in from a certain phone number here, and that's going to trigger a workflow. And we can see this workflow is also quite simple because we don't have to worry about looping or anything like that. We are essentially intaking the call using an agent. We're going to pass that back to the front end. And then we actually have a customer communication or a follow-up agent. So we're using two agents in this workflow here. So I am going to grab my handy dandy sample phone number here, really generic 555 number for you guys, so we don't use anyone's real phone number. And here we have an agent. Again, this is that real-time agent, and we have some similar setup to what we looked at last time. So we have an incoming phone number. So rather than a single location, we have a phone number that's coming in. This would be triggered via an API from like a phone dialer system or an IVR system, of course. So that's how this would be kicked off. So rather than a schedule, it's more real time. And then I have attached several different kinds of knowledge to this. So as I mentioned in the previous example, you can query multiple data sets. So the agent might not need to query every one of these depending on the scenario for the customer. So again, we're dynamic here. We're using an LLM to decide. We're passing in 4 data sets here. And then we're also passing in a file set. And this is something that makes me really excited about the prospect of these agents. A file set is essentially a folder of unstructured information. So if you've used Domo for a long time, you know we do great work with structured data. and unstructured data has maybe been a soft spot for us in the past. This really helps conquer that. And so what I've done here is used our friend AI to generate some standard operating procedures. And these are PDF documents. So here's a PDF document that is an SOP for flight cancellation and rebooking, including all of the rules that someone would need to know if they work in a call center on how to handle things like compensation, rebooking, special circumstances, weather. All of this information is packed into these PDFs. And that's something you typically need to train an agent on for months, if not years, for them to be really proficient and know these guidelines like the back of their hand. And so instead of having, or I guess in addition to having an agent know this stuff, it's really helpful if our AI agents are able to reference it in real time. And so I've just attached that folder with all of those SOPs, all 5 of them here, as a source of knowledge for our agent. And so we'll see that that gets referenced in our example here. Very similar prompt to what we looked at last time. You're an AI call center agent for an airline. When you get a call, figure out who they are, see if you can figure out what's going on based on context that's in the structured data. And then based on that information, I want you to provide a response in this format based on the SOP information that you have available. And so let's take a look at our output preview here. We have a query going on out to our current flight details. So we can see all the different routes that this customer is booked on. We can see that one of them is delayed. So that's key to our analysis here. And then we can look for some rebooking options. And it looks like we did find a couple options here. We can leverage some data modeling and preparation that's been done before. So we have some predicted information based on a machine learning model and some probabilities, all again happening sort of upstream of this process, but it's a data source that we can query. And then we start to look at our standard operating procedures. So we're asking questions like, what are the weather-related flight delay handling for our top tier clients? And so we've got, again, this is the text that's coming out of that PDF, and that's all being considered in our analysis. And what we end up with is John Smith of this phone number is an executive member. He has 3 total upcoming reservations. 1 is a delayed flight. Here's our immediate concern. Here's another upcoming flight. And then without having to receive any information from the customer, we have all of this info before we even pick up the phone. We can see that the flight is currently delayed by 90 minutes due to weather conditions. The estimated departure time is 7:33 and will arrive in Seattle around 10:54. And we're continuously monitoring it. So again, rather than picking up the phone and having to ask one of our top tier customers, John Smith, what he needs, we now know this information and we can be proactive in our response. And so the way that this all gets consumed is back in that app interface. We have a Domo form here, and the agent is filling in this information. So I can click on an individual customer. For example, this is the one that we launched at the beginning of this demo, David Jones. Here's some information about the flights, a recommended script. And then I, as an agent, can also take action. So we're going beyond this dashboard concept into something entirely different where we can take action. And so we can say, gave Mr. Jones 500 miles for the inconvenience. I'll never spell that word right. Chose to keep existing flight. And we're going to say, there were options for flights that could have been rebooked, but we're just going to say not applicable here. And then we'll submit this information. Now, because we were in that workflow, that information has been submitted back to the workflow, and we're going to go find that and see what our second agent is doing. And this is another common pattern that I'm seeing. So we can come in, go to our executions list, and I'm going to guess that it's this one. And so we can see we assigned it to the customer service agent. The agent, this isn't the exact one, but this will work for our example. The agent put in some notes and the flight rebooking option, and then we passed that to a second agent. And this agent has the responsibility for taking all of the information from the previous agent, as well as the comments made from the human agent who had the conversation with the customer. And the instructions for this agent are to generate a stylized and formatted email with this information. So this is the automated follow-up to the customer. And so assuming everything went well, I should have our email to Mr. Jones, thanking him, talking about the 400 miles that we've put into the account, and then also, confirming any information that we talked to him about. So again, just a different use of an agent here to generate an email. We can inject some HTML and make this email really stylized and pretty and formatted. We can keep it sort of plain text if we want to. Instead of passing this directly to an email, we could pass this back to a CRM or sort of a customer contact solution. So Domo doesn't have to be the one sending the email. You can brand it, any way you would like. But this is just an example of the follow-up that can be generated or some actions that can be taken. And again, those could happen outside of Domo. We can just pass this information out. So to summarize, we have a call center agent that takes in a phone number, does some analysis of our structured data based on that, and then also takes in some information from our unstructured data, our standard operating procedures, generates a recommendation for our customer service agent who is going to be on the phone, allows them to proactively address the concerns, follow up on it, generate a follow-up response in an email, and really just put a bow on it and really provide great customer service in an environment that is often high pressure and full of unhappy customers. So Eddie, I'll pass it back to close up. Those were my two examples, but also happy to take questions, comments, concerns from the audience here.
Yeah, awesome, Braxton. Obviously, lots of conversation back and forth between some of our attendees as well as Chris, and he's doing a fantastic job. We're not going to put him on the spot and throw him up on the screen to chat about some of these things. But yeah, so far so good. Nothing insanely crazy that we'll need to walk through. We did a couple questions just so everyone knows. We do record all of these sessions. They're available at the same place you found this one. So a number of folks that join us every time we do a live stream, they're like, oh, man, we're tired of hearing him say that. But it is good to remind all of the new folks that find us, if you've found us on LinkedIn, if you found us on Facebook, YouTube, or on the StreamYard page or our community page, just go to that exact same link, refresh your page as soon as we hit end the stream, and you'll be able to see these exactly in its entirety as it finishes up. So, Braxton, you have anything else to show us?
I think that's all I got for today.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. As long as no one else has any questions in the chat, we'll actually give you some time back, which is really good. But appreciate everybody attending a real quick session over Domo's AI capabilities with Agent Catalyst. And we're really excited to welcome Braxton on, and hopefully there will be many more of these in the future. So stay tuned to the community channels, stay tuned to all of our social channels to make sure you're in the loop when we jump on and do these. Thanks again, Braxton. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.